Is democracy dead in America?
Where do you see Bitcoin's price if Kamala wins on Christmas Day? And where do you see Bitcoin's price if Trump wins on Christmas Day?
Is Bitcoin going to be used as a strategic reserve?
I want to make my point very clear on this.
What are your top 3 favorite altcoins that you guys are watching for this market? Is democracy dead in the United States? This is a conversation we've been hearing float around the conference. RFK came out roaring with an audience, them chanting his name, of course, talking about how, of course, he has witnessed, not only in his family, now he's had 2 different individuals assassinated by, 3 other agencies, a part of the government organization out here. And now we see a threat against that, which of course is going to be the new administration, Kamala Harris here, the current VP, saying that she was going to attend this conference. And someone that has a very libertarian background in 2020 was actually announced the most libertarian senator. And of course, after getting kind of booed out of attending the conference, this is somebody who immediately came out, and now we're hearing that she's calling Bitcoin once again for criminals. This is something we heard from Elizabeth Warren. This is something we've heard from, the anti-crypto armies, Gary Gensler, sorry about that. And of course, even Larry Fink just a few years back. So, I want to get thoughts just on this overall. As you guys have been in the crypto markets for multiple years, this is something that's turned into not only a full-time job, but it's kind of like a lifestyle at this point. We see the transparency, the accountability, and just the value and use cases that blockchain brings. Do you believe that democracy is dead in the United States? And do you see Bitcoin, potentially being the solution to what is that current dying system?
I don't think democracy is dead in the U.S., but I also look at Bitcoin as a way to help secure that. Like a lot of what RFK was talking about today with the example of the Canadian truckers protesting in Canada, getting their assets frozen because they didn't like what the government was doing. And then they weren't able to put food on the table, weren't able to put gas within their trucks, all that stuff. But if you have a system like Bitcoin, you guarantee people's ability to express themselves and dissent peacefully against the government. So I don't think democracy is dead right now. I think a lot of the media out there wants you to think it is because it gets clicks and views, and it's manipulation of the people, in my opinion.
Are you saying that mainstream media fear mongers?
No, of course not. They're totally.
Okay.
What are you talking about?
I was making sure for monetization purposes.
No, you can trust them wholeheartedly. But Bitcoin's an amazing safeguard. So we've had a lot of talk today about having it be a strategic reserve asset, having the U.S. government buy it, RFK backing the U.S. dollar with Bitcoin. All these things would be a great way to safeguard it, because while I still think our democracy is working, your democracy is always under attack by people who want to control it.
Right. Let me throw you a question, because, RFK with the 19% of Bitcoin, being held by the U.S. government, is there a snowball's chance in hell the U.S. government holds 19% of all Bitcoin ever?
I think they hold a lot more Bitcoin than people realize right now. Honestly, on the low, without a lot of people knowing. I think they don't have a choice. When I look at, like, for example, the way people are controlled, or you can call it controlled, or whatever the case is, I think there's a couple of hierarchies. I think the first one is perception, right? A lot of these guys in power, they're out there basically looking for human labor. That's basically, if you look into economics, that's kind of like what everybody looks to control. Whether by money or influence, that's what they use. So the top, in my opinion, the tippy top is perception. And obviously they control a lot of the media outlets, and they know it better than we do. Now, if you take a step below that, it's money. So I believe right now, specifically, they control the Federal Reserve, whatever deep state, whatever conspiracy theory you want to go down. There's people that print, right, money. I think that's the biggest topic in my personal opinion. I think the Federal Reserve is more of a PR company than anything. And basically, they have the power to buy Bitcoin. I think we even heard Michael Saylor talking about that. First country to print money and buy Bitcoin is going to win the race. I think they're already doing that.
Love that.
I even have on-chain proof. But long story short, I guess to answer your question, will they publicly with the 19? Yeah, I think they will eventually.
All right, well, let me ask another question. I'm going to throw it your way. Mm-hmm. The U.S. government holds 19% of all Bitcoin. What does one Bitcoin cost?
Oh, it's interesting. We had Michael Saylor breaking down the math on that a little earlier, where it was, I can't remember the exact numbers, but it'd be something close to like, oh God, it's like $20 million is like the initial impact just from the U.S. But obviously, if the U.S. jumps into it, we are the financial capital of the world. and you're going to have everyone try to play catch up on that. You're going to have every major economy in the world start doing the same thing, if not be more aggressive. And that could scale, I mean, just ridiculously.
Yeah, it was a conversation of supply and demand, like at its most basic level. What they were kind of breaking down with the math here. And it's, in comparison to gold, where would that put us? Backing it as a strategic reserve, being able to borrow and lend against it with a lot of DeFi applications on. Now, I know Michael Saylor may not have been talking about that as much, but of course, Marathon Digital, they have Anduro. I don't know if you went to the Anduro booth yet. I watched them do a presentation to a private, like 3 people yesterday. So I just sat in the back and listened for a little bit. But they're a layer 2. They're developing on top of Bitcoin. They have their own side chains they're developing, part from Marathon. So this is, of course, a BlackRock-backed company. The amount of use case from borrowing and lending and tokenization and like all that volume that's going to occur on Bitcoin's infrastructure alone, and having the conversations of a 19% of the supply being controlled by the U.S. That's where we go back to that democratic answer. That is this breaking up a democracy. And it's a key conversation. When I'm in these back rooms at the event today, a lot of people are talking about this. They're saying, okay, they're watching CNN right now try to wash out the whole border czar situation that took place just a few years back. I mean, she was responsible for the border, and it's at its worst levels in history. And of course, they're trying to say, oh no, she was never appointed that, even though there's years and years and years of content, even Biden directly saying you are in charge of this, and they're trying to label and pivot it. And they're like trying to wash this out. And at the same time, you have a lot of people that fall to this left that don't really have this critical thinking curve, that don't have this, logical perspective on reality. And they're force-fed this information that might not be the full truth. And it's causing a lot of uncertainty in who's going to win this election. And so when I'm sitting in the back and I'm hearing these senators have these conversations with these, these VCs and everybody in the background, Tim Scott was there, Senator Cynthia Lummis was there. And of course, they're being interviewed after, person after person in person, and there's just groups around them. It's very interesting to see. It's like, are we going to get this exponential bull run that everybody expects this cycle? Or are we going to have, 4 years of uncertainty if a certain party does actually end up taking that mainstream perspective and winning this election? So it puts us into a weird place right now of, is this going to be 150K Bitcoin, in 2025? Or are we going to be stuck around 80 to 100K because we don't have the proper legislation and regulation that BlackRock and all these institutions need to continue to drive a ton of value to it?
I hear what you're saying there, but at the end of the day, like, Bitcoin's Bitcoin. Like, you can have a government try to go after Bitcoin, or China try to ban it, saw how well that worked out for them. I don't think it's a matter of, does Bitcoin stay where we are right now if, non-friendly crypto politicians win or retain office? I think it's a matter of, does it get to, let's say, 130,000 as a top, or does it get to 250,000? Like, that's, I feel like, is the question, because the impact of the halving will happen no matter what happens to politics. And so we'll always have that internal ecosystem financially for Bitcoin.
What is the difference in the Bitcoin bull run if Kamala Harris wins versus Donald Trump?
So that would depend, because I saw just today, in my opinion, I saw just like today on Twitter, Kamala Harris saying that Bitcoin's used for criminals, and I didn't take the time to verify if that's true or not. Do we have verification that that's like a legit quote from her?
Yes. I mean, unverified sources, but also when you look at it from a political landscape, her announcing that she's trying to get, that was leaked on purpose to see how the community would, react to her actually attending the conference. As well as the largest donors of the conference. And so politics are a numbers game. It's all about lobbying. So if you can't get the support of that lobbying perspective, well, you're going to pin everything against that lobbying perspective. So I think that was just very clearly a political stunt she pulled for her actually attending the conference.
Yeah, my thoughts on it, it's either a political stunt, or, which was something I also thought about, or it was a stunt potentially by Bitcoin Magazine. Also, it could be either side playing. Either side. Could be Bitcoin Magazine trying to make her look bad. It could be her trying to make her feel. I don't know. And honestly, I don't care, because I want to see Kamala come out and spend 5 to 10 minutes talking about her and what her administration policies would be on Bitcoin. I don't want to trust a tweet that I saw. I want to see her talk for 5-10 minutes. I want to see her go on Joe Rogan and talk for 4 hours about Bitcoin exclusively.
I don't know if that will happen.
Yeah, that's probably not going to happen.
She might end up saying like North Korea is our partner or something.
Yeah, you never know. But,
well, let me ask this. Is it too much to expect Kamala Harris to ask a good question about Bitcoin? Are we expecting too much from her?
So again, like I look at it very simple. it's a get with it or get left behind scenario. There's a
Mhm.
reason why every presidential candidate is pushing it. I mean, look at what we just experienced. You know, how bullish was he, right? Like even Donald Trump, like all of them switching to Bitcoin and crypto is so random. Okay, so first off, Kamala Harris or whatever her name is, if she gets elected or whatever the case is, I don't think it matters. At the end of the day, Bitcoin's Bitcoin. It thrived without them. It'll thrive with them. And I think just, you know, Donald Trump's going to make it more bullish. I think it's very simple.
I think it's.
I'd say I just have to disagree on that because if you look at like it's about their track model, it's about their cabinets, about the president, it's about the cabinets, about the Supreme Court justices, the commissioners that they're putting into their state for the SEC, the CFTC, FINRA, et cetera, right?
Yeah.
Harris is notoriously known for backing things like the 30% tax on Bitcoin miners in the United States, right? So where my focus is, you know, driving that innovation outside the United States, which isn't good because, you know, when you actually look at the underlying like infrastructure of Bitcoin, I think decentralization is often like misconstrued. There's a lot of kind of misinformation out there on what I think like decentralization is kind of a buzzword. Because it's this giant masquerade that's been used by like VCs that really control a lot of the narrative. I mean, when you actually look at the mempools, it's very limited between like Bitmain and some of the largest Bitcoin mining providers out there. Now, with that said, it's not like you can just shut it down, right? It'll just move elsewhere or go somewhere else. So I want to invite that here to the States. And Harris is notoriously known just for, you know, pushing that elsewhere. You know, they want to, you know, focus, like if you look at energy, what they did with their entire campaign in 2020 was, you know, for environmental impacts. They were like the Keystone Pipeline. I don't know if you guys remember this. They were like, no drilling. Like, they were against drill, baby, drill from Donald Trump. And the thing about having oil in the States was it was a focus on, of course, being not only the largest importer and exporter of oil, but it was so that way we can drive down the energy costs. Because that, of course, makes your supply chains cheaper, which, of course, makes your groceries cheaper, which makes your, you know, utilities cheaper and brings down that inflation. And so now seeing them completely pivot on that, I don't think it was necessarily out of nowhere that Trump, you know, realized tokenization was powerful. I think he was just, you know, I don't even know if luckily enough is the right term for this, but lucky enough to figure out that the tokenization of this and reducing those methane emissions and being able to use things like ConocoPhillips. I'm forgetting the company they're partnered with right now, but they're reducing their flare emissions with Bitcoin miners. You know, you can hook these up to landfills. And so he wants to bring a ton of Bitcoin mining here. That might mean, you know, we have a ton of a lot more stable infrastructure being built and utilized that allows us not only to, you know, create more oil, but from an ESG perspective, because ESG it's a good thing from BlackRock. Their idea was good, but what they ended up doing was treating it like organic apples at a grocery store, which, you know, was no different than the apples next to it because it had the same pesticides sprayed across it in the store.
And then ESG got weaponized.
And then rolled with it. So I like to say like Bitcoin's kind of true ESG in that case. That it can reduce methane emissions, you can stabilize power grids, you can access a new GDP and a new value that once didn't exist. And not to say that, again, everything on the Trump side's perfect whatsoever. I just think if we do get that type of cabinet into a position, I mean, we're talking Elizabeth Warren, we're talking Nancy Pelosi. Inside trading is going to be another 4 years, like worse than we've ever seen before. The anti-crypto army going to continue to run rampant. Gary Gensler is going to continue to waste taxpayer dollars and make every single entrepreneur in the crypto scene like scared, unknown, fearful, right? And I'm worried we'll drive it out. And my last point would be the taxing the rich. Like if we even look at, just use the U.S. debt clock, right? A lot of the, you know, left-leaning individuals, they want to tax the ultra wealthy to fix our economy. Like this, you know, it sounds amazing. Yeah, we should tax the billionaires, right? But if you put, I think, the top 1,000 billionaires together, I think they control roughly $5.5 trillion. Don't quote me on that. Somewhere around that range in terms of capital. Even if we were to tax 20 to 30% of that, our national debt interest just off our interest rate of loans is going to be roughly $1.2 trillion, I think, annually coming up very, very soon. So we're not even paying back our debts we're creating, let alone how much we're spending.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot to break down there. Curious to get your guys' thoughts on that. But it's got my head spinning right now at this convention.
You know, a lot of people are saying, you know, we are seeing the beginning stages of a falling empire, the Ray Dalio, you know, model where America might be losing its dominance here. What does that mean for Bitcoin? I mean, do we have a potential $1 million Bitcoin before 2030?
Day one, whoever wins comes in, strategic reserve. That would probably be Trump out of the two at this point. Every single nation state would be playing catch up immediately. It would be panic. It would be a flood to buy every Satoshi you possibly could because the United States has more money than God.
Yeah.
So it would be a monumental surge in an asset class that would make the crazy chart that we have today look like a tiny ant against the tsunami wave that would be Mount Everest. It would be a rush for an asset class that we have never seen happen so quickly because we've never had technology be as advanced as it is today to enable financial execution at the level that we have.
Yeah, and I would add to that too is people don't realize the DeFi ecosystem that's developing. I would actually say like the hot take on that would be the rise of a new empire, which is still the United States, but digitalized. You know, in Ray Dalio's book, The Changing World Order, it's 100-year cycles. You know, going back to the Dutch, he obviously relates all the way back to the Roman Empire, but specifically if we're talking about capitalism, that was created with world trade in, I think, the 1500s. And so when he looks at this 100-year cycle going all the way through the British Empire, India, China, being the last ones, I think, to come off the gold standard or silver standard in like the 1920s, leading up to where the United States is now, they don't realize that, you know, there's a lot of fear mongering in the media. Like you hear BRICS, you hear the downfall of the US dollar. We're going to collapse. It's going to zero.
Saudi Arabia did a trade and they didn't use the dollar. Now it's time to panic.
And now, we're sell everything, get gold now. And then you realize, well, who are the largest buyers of US treasuries? It's actually going to be like Tether right now. It's your stablecoin providers. So if we see this adoption and tokenization and you get a Bitcoin reserve like this, they want to utilize all of this value that exists out there. I mean, Tether right now is catching Germany's GDP in size soon. So if this is at that level, we're talking now 10, 15, 20 trillion dollars in capital. We're talking, you know, hundreds, if not trillions of dollars in United States treasuries being bought. So it actually brings even more value to the US dollar.
Yeah, which is like one thing, like earlier, what was it, near the end of 2023, there was a lot of content being made about how like Tether's about to collapse.
Yes.
And stuff like that. That trend came back, which I feel like happens once every year. And I was just looking at everybody and I was just like, what are you talking about? Like, they're one of the largest buyers of bonds. China's dumping bonds right now.
Yes.
So like, that is so incredibly important to the American government to maintain our empire. There needs to be stability in people buying our debt.
You're bringing up a very serious point here where the U.S. government is relying on Tether to buy their debt that no one else wants to buy. Do you think there's government coordination between Tether and the U.S. government?
I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, if it came out one day in an unclassified file, I'd be like, yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
I mean, look at FTX with Maxine Waters. I mean, how much money was going to, you know, dark pool donation funds? We'll never know. You know, this is someone that met with Gary Gensler 12 times. I mean, make the math. It doesn't associate itself. So I think is like you saying, I think there's a lot more ties than people want to believe. And there's also this reality that, you know, people don't want to believe that crypto is just Wall Street 2.0. It's just as corrupted, but it's also needed to, you have to have the government and BlackRock and all. If you want that institutional adoption, it's not like it just magically floats. It's a free market. So you can't say, okay, we're going to create this decentralized system, this free, fair system, and not let institutions in. So anybody with more money is going to have more power and come in and have more control.
You know, the first sign you see with that is when you see government officials starting to work for these private sector companies. And we're seeing that right now. You see it in the oil industry. You see it in the tobacco industry. You see it in the banking industry. And now we're starting to see it in the crypto industry. Are you comfortable giving a price prediction for Christmas Day of this year? Because I have two scenarios for you. Yeah. Where do you see Bitcoin's price if Kamala wins on Christmas Day? And where do you see Bitcoin's price if Trump wins on Christmas Day?
I have something a little bit better because I actually have research that backs this. So I can't, like price, I don't know. But I do have something that's even juicier. So I believe that there's 3 cycles. The Federal Reserve cycle, Bitcoin halving cycle, everybody knows. And I think the biggest one, which I love the most, is the altcoin cycle. So my predictions say from history that I believe approximately 251 days after the Bitcoin halving, which is like around Christmas Day, we're going to actually start the altcoin cycle. And
we've done the same math.
You have the same math?
We have the same math.
That's nice. So that's a confirmation. So I believe, by the way, everything I speak is coming from an investor perspective. And my goal here is just to try to make as much money as possible. Was a Bitcoin maxi at one point, and then I made a whole bunch of money off Ethereum. And I believe, and I even have proof that you guys are talking about Tether. I think the Federal Reserve is connected to USDC.
Exactly. I think that's a stronger connection.
So there's a really cool chart. I'll show you guys specifics, but I'll just give a brief explanation. So Silicon Valley Bank went.
It's up right now. Where you're looking at it right now. It's above your head.
Okay. Okay. So basically, we have, of course, FTX Exchange going bankrupt at the exact bottom of the market. That's fishy. Now, if we keep going, it caused Silicon Valley Bank to collapse. And if you look at that specifically, we had the Federal Reserve bail them out. On that exact same day, we have an abnormal spike from USDC being, basically printed. And when I mean abnormal, we've never seen it in the history of all USDC if you look on chain. And on the exact same day, we have staked light out ether being printed on an abnormal level. We're talking about abnormal, like $6 billion in 24 hours, which is not even close to normal at all. And you see the spikes. So when I saw this, it really just shows connections, because we have people at Coinbase that work for, the Federal Reserve, or, a lot of collusion there and vice versa. I believe that's going to be the potential CDBC and like really take over. Not Tether. I think it's USDC for sure with Coinbase.
We did get the news release with Tether, though, that they were collaborating with U.S. government officials.
I believe that.
Yeah, what was it? Money laundering?
Yeah.
I forget when that came. I think it was like a year ago now at this point.
Yeah.
CBDC stands for Central Bank Digital Currency.
Yeah.
What does CBDCs mean for Americans' freedoms?
So it's actually not. I want to make my point very clear on this. CBDCs and the system we have today actually really aren't that different. Like, right, you have your ones and zeros. Your bank can be frozen if the bank collaborates with the government. It's really not too different from CBDCs, and they can track you. However, the CBDC lowers the last little tiny bit of security that the American citizens or citizens of any country have, and it does make it easier to provide a holistic data proof, a product placement, data proof of your entire spending. So it's a faster pull of that data for a potentially tyrannical government, which is a problem. So I don't want CBDCs. It's a worse system than we have today. However, I feel like CBDCs is a topic that often gets talked about, how it's like, it's going to be the end of the world. And I'm like, no, guys, we're already like one step away from that, like right now.
Yeah, my biggest issue with it is the programmable money. So they can say, well, if you get a stimulus check and you're, middle income or, the minority class that's struggling, and you receive a stimulus from the government, or even if it could be Social Security, it could be it could be whatever it is, they could actually create an expiration on it, saying you have to invest into certain assets. They have to be ESG proof. They could actually program it to actually, expire. I'm not necessarily worried about central bank digital currencies too much, because we know actually a lot of the individuals that have passed a lot of the legislation that will force, if any government wants to establish that, they're gonna have to sue each and every single state. So Wyoming, Texas, I think South Carolina, a bunch of Florida, they've all adopted a lot of this legislation. Where, my worry isn't necessarily the CBDC more, it's understanding the stablecoin initiative, which is what we were talking about, which is kind of where we're heading here already. It's like the on-ramps and off-ramps of regulations, who's going to be able to control those liquidity valves, essentially, and who's making money off the back end of everything. And it's BlackRock controls the reserves. They own USDXX. So if there's more and more stable coins, they're making more and more money. But if there's more and more stable coins, they're borrowing against that and investing into more and more things. They have Coinbase. They have, every single Bitcoin miner out there. They make money off of, nobody realizes this, but they're kind of essentially turning into this new Federal Reserve, where they're going to be making money off all the transaction that exists in this economy. And they're going to have a valve and a switch where they can invest where they want, take out where they want, and invest in where they want, and take out where they want. And that was all done through on-ramps and off-ramps to stablecoins. So that in itself is kind of a CBDC, but it's more of a kleptocracy version than it would be a government version.
Yeah, and that kind of goes into a topic that I like to talk about a lot, which is just like how the American empire works. American empire's bank is BlackRock. Its investment firm is BlackRock. Feel like, all the aid that we put into Ukraine, there are contractual stipulations about resources that go to BlackRock. BlackRock owns 40% of the market share of 4 or 6 of the top publicly traded Bitcoin miners.
Yep.
You can already see, and there was a panel earlier today at the conference talking about it, about how it is, I thought it was a fascinating conversation. I forget the guy's name, but it was how the United States empire needs to adopt Bitcoin. Not that it should, it needs to maintain its dominance. And all the incentives are there. You have the threat of de-dollarization, whether how successful or not it ends up becoming is up for debate, but it is happening, it's a threat. And what you want to have is, if you are the global superpower and you want to maintain and continue the strength and growth of your empire, you need to have your thumb on the financial asset that is used and most beloved by the world, which for a while has been the dollar. And if that becomes Bitcoin, which we all hope it is, the United States needs to have dominance of Bitcoin mining, and it needs to have more Bitcoin than anybody else. It is, and this is one of the reasons why I think no matter who gets in office, it is inevitable that the United States ends up becoming one of, if not the biggest Bitcoin holder in the world, for better or for worse, because the incentives are there for the U.S. empire.
So that is the answer to the Harris-Trump question. Is, okay, which cabinet is going to be... That's exactly, that would be my answer to that. So I would have to agree complete with that. I want to ask one last question for you guys here. Obviously, both, large crypto TikTokers, you guys have been in crypto for a really long time at this point, almost too long. We're not just Bitcoiners, guys. We're just at Bitcoin Nashville giving you guys all the juice. And of course, these are all actually fantastic conversations. This is all incredibly bullish for crypto. The adoption, the usership, everything is going towards an uptrend in these markets. It's just a matter of when, not if. So again, if we're talking about certain administrations, it means it might be, lengthen a little bit before we get that, that bull run that we were talking about. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it doesn't. But I want to ask you guys, just off the top of your heads, I'm going to put you on the spot here. What are your top 3 favorite altcoins that you guys are watching for this market?
Favorite changes, but I'll tell you my top 3 holdings: Aerodrome Finance, Pendle Finance, and Brett on Base ecosystem. I'm very bullish on the Base ecosystem. A lot of people don't know this, but
I think everybody here holds Aero.
You hold it?
Yeah. We're all very, very early Aero shillers, and we all got our early bag. I didn't take enough profit. How about you?
Oh, no, I just got in. I like tanks.
It's a great time to get in.
Pendle's great.
I ate off Pendle. That was like my biggest play. And then when I moved away from Arbitrum and back to Base Aerodrome, do you guys know, maybe I'm crazy, if you look at coinmarketcap.com, they don't list Aero in the Base ecosystem category.
Oh, I haven't looked it up on the Base category.
You know that smells...
CoinMarketCap?
Yeah.
Yeah, CoinMarketCap is just trash.
You know what that smells like to me?
Their API
They
is
always
trash.
update it late.
Smells like opportunity.
They're like months
seriously?
behind.
Yeah.
Their API and CoinMarketCap's like, you got to use like CoinGecko.
I know I use CoinGecko, but obviously they're owned by Binance.
They're just way faster.
Yeah, they're slow to their APIs. But that was 3.
I'm going to set you up with the same question. We're at the biggest crypto conference in the world. What are the 3 hottest altcoins for this cycle?
For me, it's going to be if you say hottest, it's going to be some random meme coin you've never heard of that pumps 10,000% in a day. But my favorite are Aerodrome, Jupiter, and Immutable X. I still really like Immutable X.
Gods Unchained fan?
I've played it. I've dabbled with it. It's not the only one I've dabbled with. For me, Web3 gaming, my first 100x was Engine Coin. I bought it at 2 cents, sold it at about 240. And I love Web3 gaming. Because to me, even though like we haven't had a game really blow up yet, I mean like Axie, it blew up in player count, but like didn't have the most engaging games, exactly. Yeah, it kind of wrecked the game. So you have a massive audience of people who already spend like V-Bucks, like these digital currencies that aren't cryptocurrencies. Counter-Strike, game on PC, I don't know if you guys know it, but millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars are spent on cosmetics, NFT.
Yep.
All you have to do is pair that audience who's already familiar and already spending the money and give them a game to then bring on the biggest adoption of non-coiners onto Web3. But you have to make it seamless. You have to have the economy not make the game suck. And you have to make a game that's good, which is so hard. It's almost never done with all the other games that are made.
They shouldn't have a token. They should just launch an NFT marketplace, have a swap on the back end, say nothing about NFTs, say nothing about the swap, and take a 30% tax. It cannot. I agree 100%. That is, I say that all the time. I'm like, have the swap, because they make money off not only the transactions of them trading the equipment, but they could take a 30% tax.
Yeah, and it's a multi-billion-dollar market that you could then access with hundreds of millions of people, or even adults like myself, who play video games today. And it would be the biggest influx of people on chain that you could possibly have, even bigger than DeFi, the world of finance. So many more people play games than invest in general. So that's why I love Immutable X. Big fan of Beam also, but if you give me the top 3, Aerodrome, Immutable X, even though the tokenomics for both of those aren't the greatest, and then Jupiter, just because, it's competing with Uniswap for top exchange.
Your top 3, DZ.
All right, top 3. I'm going to be a Cardano shiller through and through. Everybody, it's in my bones, and I can't help myself. But I'm going to stick with Aero. I am a big buyer of Aero. The last token I actually bought, though, was Ondo. I'm a big fan of Ondo, and I got to be a sneaky linker. We love some Chainlink here.
Yeah, I have to say Chainlink, Ondo. We are all Aerodrome fanatics. It's just the easiest play because it's like Base has no token. So when liquidity comes, that AMM is going to see so much volume and growth. And it's like, this is the exchange. So it's like, if we lose against that, that essentially means Coinbase and BlackRock are losing.
Yeah,
folks, it's a pretty easy bet.
Either of them, let alone both of them, seems like a poor financial decision.
If you look at the top 10 percentage gains last cycle, like not market cap, but like money made, 2 of them were Binance and of course PancakeSwap. So this is like the same thing with Base specifically. Like DEXs do very well, very easy, safe. You don't have to research too much. Just make sure you get the best decks on the ecosystem you're buying.
Only difference is there's no 3-letter agency that's going to kick them out of the United States and then, of course, bring over their CEO and put them in jail for a little bit, fine them $4 billion, and then push them out and just launch the same thing with PayPal, right?
Well, they might extort them and
Is that a real life example? Did that happen? That happened?
Paxos?
I know.
Okay, yeah. For audience that doesn't know that and that went over your head, Paxos pushed out BUSD, ends up not being labeled as secure. So everything they did was to push that out and bring USDC in. Guys, thank you so much for being here. Absolute pleasure to have you guys coming up here. Made them walk 1.5 miles in the extremely hot, humid heat. I'm just kidding. It was right down the street, guys. Thank you for joining.
I'm from Maine. It's torturous down here.
Really quick, we're going to go down the line. If you could just say, again, where your channel's at, how they can find you. We're going to link it all in the description below for you.
Cool. Just Google search Alexander Lorenzo. You can find me anywhere. I'm all over.
Man's on Google. Well, William,
Yeah.
he's on the Chinese platform that is watching you every single day.
Yes, we love our Chinese overlords.
We love giving our data to
Xi Jinping. He's the thing.
Wait, but where can we find you?
Yeah, you can find me on TikTok. You can search coin_guide or type in William Watson. You'll find me.
Easy, where can we find you? No, I'm just kidding.
All right, of course, DZ.eth, DZ_BTC. And of course, thank you for joining, watching this Discover Crypto content. Hit that like button, share, all that good stuff.
See you guys later. Thank you guys so much. That was awesome.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.